Hey everyone. Today I wanted to go over a lot of the reading material and like the books, as well as a lot of like websites and some other YouTube channels that I've used throughout the last few years to really learn about personal finance and investing, a little bit of business, and just overall good financial habits, you can call it. And I honestly came up with about 10 different versions of how I was going to present this material to you guys. I was thinking, well, should I start out with the personal finance stuff and then move on to investing and then go to like business stuff, or should I switch it up, or what I should do? And quite frankly, I'm at the point now where I just screw it, because all the material is right over here. These are all the books, and that's just the books. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly grab a book and I'll just review it for you and tell you what I got out of it. Book number 1, and I am randomly picking this. Let's see. Oh, that's convenient. All right. Millionaire Next Door. So for those of you that know, I'm really heavy when it comes to logic and analysis, and I'm an engineer. So obviously, I have a natural tendency to think that way. This book is essentially a giant research study on millionaires. And it goes through and explains a lot of activities and thought processes that millionaires think and the way that they act. One of the big lessons I got out of this book is that there are a lot of things that you can do with money. You can borrow against your 401k. You can borrow against an IRA. You can do payday loans. You can play the lottery. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can invest in individual stocks. You can invest in mutual funds. You can invest in real estate. You can also invest in what are called REITs, which is real estate income trusts, which are companies that invest in real estate. But there's also a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing. And this kind of like highlights a lot of the things that you should be doing. Number 2. Let's see here. Magic of thinking big. I did a video a while back ago when, especially during the beginning of the year, that was all about like savings accounts. A lot of people were making New Year's resolutions. And in that video, I kind of challenged that notion, because a lot of people were making challenges and resolutions. Like I think there was one, I think it was called like the 52-week challenge, and you have to save like a penny a day or something like that, or $1 a day. Anyways, the ending result was gonna be that you'd end up saving like $1,300 at the end of the year. And I challenged that because that's not real. That's not enough. That's not going to make any kind of real significant difference. This is really challenges you, and for me, it really challenges me. And I was really channeling a lot of the lessons from this to think bigger, to think and go beyond that. It's not enough. The idea is to not think realistically, but to think idealistically. Right now, we are trying to save for a house, and the numbers realistically say that we should be able to save around $26,000 per year. I bumped that up to $40,000 because I want to go bigger. I want that extra challenge in there. There's a video on YouTube, and I can't remember where it is, but it's by Jordan Belfort, The Real Wolf of Wall Street, where he mentions that your goals that you set should be so outlandish that it's almost impossible to make them, but still possible. And personally for me, I hate it when I reach my financial goals, because it means I either didn't push myself hard enough, or I wasn't thinking big enough and trying things out in the grand scheme. All right. Let's see here. I feel like Karnak. 10 Pillars of Wealth. This is more of a mentality concept on how to basically be a millionaire and everything. But one of the ones I do remember particularly with this one is this really goes into a lot of detail about how, like I said, to think about being a millionaire and everything. And one of them, where he talks about the pillars, is about this adopting an abundance mindset. And this is something that I've noticed frequently with a lot of books dealing with wealth. And that's this idea that you don't want to worry about the little things. It's not about, oh, well, I changed my phone plan and now I saved an extra $30 a month. Or, oh, I have these coupons and now I'm going to be able to get 15% off. Or, oh, crap, I left the light on before we left the house and now the bill's going to be an extra 40 or 50 bucks. Who cares? An abundance mindset is this notion that there is so much money and wealth available to you that you have the ability to get a hold of it, and that all these tiny little nuances don't really make a whole lot of difference. if you want to reallocate funds in your budget so that, so let's say we save $20 in one area so that we can now spend $20 in another area, that's perfectly fine. But the reality is that those things aren't really going to make a whole hill of beans of a difference. And it kind of goes along the same idea with the Thinking Big book, right, where have idealistic goals. Don't be realistic. Because the bigger the goals are, the more abundance you're going to be thinking, the more you're going to be able to attain that kind of wealth. Okay. Now, Dave Ramsey. Truth be told, this book actually was not the book that this really should be. This book really should be the My Total Money Makeover, because that was actually the first book I ever read when it came to money management, and it's actually what started me on this whole journey. I think it was back in 2010, early 2010 is when I actually started doing it. But this book, from what I've noticed, it's The Complete Guide to Money, Dave Ramsey. There's actually quite a bit of similarities between this and the My Total Money Makeover book, from what I can remember. This is a book that actually came with Financial Peace University, but there, again, a lot of real similarities. I think it goes over the baby steps and it goes over a lot of the philosophies. I think it goes over debt myths and everything like that. So definitely worth a read. And this book also itself is worth a read. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. If you're going to read this book, get a pen and paper and take notes, because there's a lot of really amazing sound bites in here. In particular, there's one that really stands out. And the way he writes this is he writes these in what are called like little wealth files. And like I said, these are like little sound bites. So this is the number 12 one right there. It says, rich people think both, poor people think either or. And again, this kind of correlates with the abundance mindset as well as the thinking big. The way I've interpreted this is, so instead of thinking of, okay, I either pay the electric bill this month or we buy meat, for example, wealthy people do both. They figure out how they can do both. And a lot of times, poor people, if you want to call them that, they think it's either one or the other. They only can have one or the other because they don't have that abundance mindset. That's where abundance comes from. So this really, again, it challenges you to think bigger. And I think a lot of problems with society now is we're constantly taught that it's got to be done this way and this way and this way, and this is what you're allowed and this is all you can have, and everything's kind of like compartmentalized. And a lot of this wealth building has to do with expanding what you know to be possible. Next, let's go to the left. Richest Man in Babylon. This was the book that originally I finally learned, because they mentioned in here to save 10% of your income. But it was from reading this that I finally realized, oh, wait a minute, it's not just 10% savings. It's that savings goes into investments to make more money. So it talks about saving 10% of your wealth, although you can bump that up. But it really is the principle of saving, and then those savings then become actual investments later on down the road. The big thing that I learned from this one, though, was about protection. There's a whole section in here on what they call the walls of Babylon. So Babylon is like the wealthiest city. This was meant for like a long time ago. Babylon was the wealthiest city, and the walls are these thick stone granite walls that, let's say if the army is out and they can't protect the city, the walls are what are going to protect from the arrows and incoming invaders. And those would be things like your emergency fund, insurance, your sinking funds. Those are the things that protect against outside invaders from your wealth, or like the wealthiest city. For the investing side, this is the Common Sense Investing by John or Jack Bogle. John Bogle was I think he was the founder of the Vanguard Group, and also basically created index funds. What's really great about this is where I learned about mutual funds. This is specifically the book that I learned that taught me how mutual funds work, and in particular how index funds. Now, when I mean index funds are mutual funds, but there's passive index funds, passively managed index funds, and then there's actively managed funds. And this goes through a whole amount of everything you're going to need to know with regards to funds. With that, I'm going to also add another book on top of this, which I don't have with me. And the book that got me interested into this whole stuff and got me actually started on with John Bogle was a book by J.L. Collins called The Simple Path to Wealth. That book was written, his name is, I think it was Jim Collins, and he wrote that book because he wrote it mainly for his daughter, because his daughter wanted to be able to invest and enjoy her life, but at the same time, she wasn't really interested in money and finance and investing. So he wrote a very simple way for her to enjoy her retirement, for her to enjoy her wealth and everything. So this way she could kind of focus on what was important to her and not have to worry about investing and all other kind of stuff. Millionaire Mind. Again, this is kind of like The Millionaire Next Door. It was written actually by the same author, Thomas Stanley. Again, a really great book. For me, the big thing is seeing how to think. It's the way millionaires think, the way that they handle things. It's not just the statistics anymore, but it's actually why they do a lot of things that they do. So definitely worth a read on that one. Millionaire Fastlane. I have mixed feelings about this book. On one hand, it's really good. The last third of it is really amazing because it's really about identifying key factors, especially on income streams, and identifying what's important. What do you need to raise? Do you need to raise your hourly rate? Do you need to raise a certain price? Do you need to raise, identifying what the income streams are and how to basically build a business to become a millionaire. Now you see how thick this book is? At least half of this, if not maybe 2/3, could be cut out, because as much as I enjoy the material in the last third of it, the first 2/3 of it basically are him bashing and criticizing and ridiculing a lot of other financial people, including Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, and even Thomas Stanley in The Millionaire Mind, which I'm not saying there's a problem with him having criticisms with that, but the way he presents it is very... word douchebag comes to mind when I was reading it. And I kind of found myself really just wanting to skip and skip and skip until I was really going to start getting to the good meat of this book. So just be aware that it does, criticize a lot of other financial people in a way that is kind of taking a piss on them. But it does have some really amazing info, especially the last 1/3 of it, on how businesses start and how to identify key factors and say income streams that you want to take advantage of. All right, I'm going to look now. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The big thing, this should be on everyone's reading list. It's a bit thick, but it's definitely worth it. For me, the number one bit of information that I took from this is habit number 1, which is being proactive. Going out and making things happen as opposed to sitting back and waiting for things to happen definitely helps in all aspects, not just financial, but all aspects. Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is the book that showed me originally the whole concept of having your assets pay for things for you. So whatever your normal expenses are, you can have an asset handle that for you. There's a little bit of controversy, a little bit of button heads between these two. All right, Kiyosaki is okay with having debt. Dave Ramsey is completely anti-debt. The solution to that is a little bit in here. All right, this is where you're going to kind of find a little bit of a bridge between these two. I personally don't use debt just simply because I'm not interested in it. But again, there's still a lot of really great, valuable information in it. The Goal, Eli Goldratt. So this is a book that is all about, it's really meant for if you're like a business manager or a manufacturing, or maybe you run a manufacturing plant, and it's all about how to get your company to reach, in this case, the goal, which is for a company which is to make money. And the way that you make money, according to here, and utilizing what's called the theory of constraints, is you have to be increasing your throughput, which means you're making sales. You're decreasing your inventory, which means you're taking what you have saved up and you're converting it into sales, and you're not paying the overhead for that inventory. And then finally, reducing your operational expenses. If what you're doing is not doing one of those 3 things, you are not making money, and therefore you're not moving towards the goal. this philosophy and the way to think about this is exactly what I started applying when I started looking at, like, say, net worth equals assets minus liabilities, cash flow equals income minus expenses. Anything that I do that does not increase net worth, does not increase cash flow, does not increase overall protection is something I don't do, because it's not working in the benefit of making money, and it's not working in the benefit of overall financial security. And that thinking is what I really took away from this. One of my all-time favorite books that I recommend, I don't really know if it has anything to do with money or finance or investing or anything, but it's just because it was a really great book for me, and that's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I originally heard of this book from Will Smith when he was doing an interview. And it's the story of a character, of a boy. His name is Santiago, and he goes on this journey to, discover his dream. And his dream is to one day see the pyramids, because he thinks there's some kind of a treasure there. And along the way, he meets an alchemist, which is like a mystical chemist. And the whole idea is in alchemy is where what you do is you take this, what's called the philosopher's stone, and with that you can basically convert lead into gold, transform lead into gold. But that's more of an analogy of the transformation that the boy Santiago goes through as he goes to reaching for his goals and striving to go after his dreams. It's the process of he started out as a sheep herder, and eventually works his way to his whole journey, and that process of turning lead into gold, of turning from where he was to reaching his dream. So just really an all good story all around. I don't usually listen to podcasts, but I do have some YouTube channels for you to take a look at. And the first one actually happens to be a podcast, and that's Paula Pant on the Afford Anything podcast. Now, she pushed this out on a YouTube channel, but they basically are podcasts. And she's really good at explaining some really complicated financial concepts, especially when it comes to like taxes and investments. If you're not sure how certain things work, you can actually call her up and ask her, and she will answer the question on her podcast. Sometimes she'll have guests on, and she's really knowledgeable, and she also has a very nice sounding voice, so it's very easy to listen to her. But again, she's very knowledgeable, and usually what I'll do is I'll just turn like a video of hers on and listen to it on the ride to work. Now, a second good YouTube channel to take a look at if you're especially interested in dividend investing is Joseph Carlson. He has had a channel up for, I guess, maybe a couple years now, and he documents his dividend investing portfolio all the way, it's over at M1 as well, all the way back when it was like around $20,000, and now it's like, I think in the upper 70s thousands. So he really shows how he made his progress. He goes over his investing philosophy, why he picks certain companies. And the other cool thing is people will sometimes ask him questions, and he'll answer questions on his show. He calls it the Joseph Carlson Show. But then what he'll also do is if there's anything going on in the news and in the media regarding the stock market, regarding the economy or anything, he'll discuss that and show how it relates to his portfolio and what his thoughts are. And just a quick update on the dividend income portfolio. As you can see, I've made quite a few more additions, specifically with the slices and the different sectors. So I have like technology down here. That's where I have IBM. I also have a few other things like industrials. I've moved 3M from consumer. Now overall, I want to also add in some energy as well. And a couple of companies that I was looking at that I had my eye on, one was ExxonMobil, because they have some pretty good dividend history right here. So I like to see consistent dividend payouts that are gradually growing. Chevron also has the same deal in there. So I'm thinking of adding some more stocks in there, probably, like I said, ExxonMobil and some Chevron. Although what I'm a little bit concerned with is if I look over here on this growth of electric vehicles market, you can see that the growth and sales of electric vehicles have been gradually increasing over time. So what I want to make sure is that if I'm going to be putting money into energy, I want to be a little bit careful, put only 3 or 4% in there, because you can see electric vehicles are really starting to take the market, so I'm not quite sure how much of my portfolio I want to invest into actual energy. So we'll go overall and we'll see how that turns out in the future. But for right now, doing pretty good and staying steady. And one last thing, I wanted to click on the activity and show you that not only did we get the first actual dividend payout of the whole 3 cents, but also wanted to show you that I've also been investing. There's $25 there, $25 there. I'll also be doing another $25 for tomorrow. every week. I've been constantly adding money in, even though the overall portfolio has been, kind of going down. The gains have been down, the returns have been down. This is actually a really good time to be buying a lot of this stuff. I definitely want to make sure that I'm continuing to invest and continuing to put money in. This is a lot of red, but it's going to go up. So I'm not too worried about that in the long run. So this is part one of what I'll consider like a two-part mini-series on this channel. And next week, I'll go over kind of like a consolidation of all these books and kind of show you what I've learned throughout the years along with all of this information into really 4 main principles of money that I pretty much follow and have been following for the last several years. So that'll be coming up for next week. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching and have a great weekend and see you later.